Thank you for being here, everybody. My name is Emily Garvey. I'm the Associate Director of Justice Education at the Institute for Social Concerns. On behalf of the Institute, I'd like to welcome you all here tonight, students, staff, faculty, and members and friends of the Andrews and McNeil families. I'm joined on the stage by Felicia Johnson O'Brien, Justice Education Program Director. And we're both very excited to note the extraordinary work and research done this summer by the NDBridge students and Social Concerns Summer Fellowship students. A note of thanks before we begin to my colleagues who helped coordinate all the many logistical and communication needs of an event like this. Jalee Busby, Greg White, Javi Zubizarreta, David Kramer, and Todd Boroff. Special thanks also to the staff of McKenna Hall for this beautiful space and for Three Leaf Catering for the exceptional food that we'll enjoy at the reception afterwards. This summer, 283 students participated in programs offered through the Institute for Social Concerns. Students in these programs worked with 148 nonprofit organizations around the globe. And these are organizations that address the needs of people in their communities. Offering 283 Notre Dame students the ability to see up close the needs of people in their communities and to question and learn about the structures of injustice that create those needs is a crucial element of our work in justice education. These students made an enormous impact. They contributed over 65,000 hours of work to community organizations. And they, in turn, were impacted in enormous ways as well, academically, personally, professionally, spiritually, vocationally, just to name a few. Tonight marks a comma for these students, not a period. They are going to take what they learned, witnessed, experienced, and lived through and use their gifts and talents to make responses to justice needs in the world, to promote the common good and human flourishing. Will all the students who were engaged in summer programs through the Institute for Social Concerns please rise so that you can be recognized. We are here tonight to recognize students in two programs, NDBridge and Social Concerns Summer Fellowships. NDBridge students were sent out in groups of 4. They were rising sophomores, and they were sent to work at organizations who are devoted to helping people in their communities to fully flourish to the best extent possible. They worked with a variety of organizations: refugees, returning citizens, the unhoused, the medically underserved, and more. Similarly, Social Concerns Summer Fellowship students also went out for 8 weeks in the summer. These were rising juniors and seniors, and they too worked with people in communities around the globe, and their work was more tightly aligned with their professional or personal interests. Both sets of students took a class in the spring semester. NDBridge was taught by Professor Ryan Juskis, and the Social Concerns Summer Fellowships were taught by Dr. Sam Dean. In addition to that, they were supported during the summer by numerous Institute for Social Concerns faculty and staff. Additionally, Notre Dame faculty were part of this crucial network of support and mentorship in the area of research and community engagement. Almost 80 Notre Dame faculty were part of this work, and we thank you for your crucial support and mentorship to these students. We're here tonight to listen to these 6 students present on their work and their research. But before we do, it's worth noting 2 factors. And the first is about research. These summer experiences are remarkable, wholehearted experiences of proximity to questions of justice and the ensuing needs of communities, and we want students to engage deeply with these questions. Notre Dame students are extraordinary. You are. So we want students bringing everything they have to this experience, their bodies, their hearts, and their minds. We want them not only giving of their time and energy, but thinking critically about why these organizations exist in the first place. What are the structures of injustice that I might better use my gifts and respond to the needs of these communities around the globe? What's missing? What's broken? What's in need of a response? Bodies, hearts, and minds. The second point is about research and that it is infused with Catholic social teaching. This is critical. Students who go out and do this work and research must have principles such as human dignity, preferential option for the poor and vulnerable, subsidiarity, and the common good embedded in their research. In other words, we want students who have an understanding of what the common good looks like so that when they get to that community that they are going to be a part of for 8 weeks, they are able to look around and say, where are people flourishing? Where are they not? What might be some possible responses? How can I respond? This is the distinctive community-engaged research that we offer in NDBridge and Social Concerns Summer Fellowship opportunities. Work infused with Catholic social teaching, and that asks Notre Dame students to bring their big, beautiful minds and their big, beautiful hearts to these experiences so that questions of justice might be investigated and in turn responded to. Tonight, we recognize NDBridge and Summer Fellowship students who worked with nonprofits this summer and who researched questions of justice and the common good. The 6 students behind me will receive Research for the Common Good Awards, and these carry up to $5,000 in funding to continue researching questions of justice over the next year. They are noted in alphabetical order in your programs. Also in your programs are the 4 finalists and their work and their questions that they investigated. They will receive up to $1,000 to continue researching questions of the common good and justice. And finally, in your programs are listed last year's recipients with updates on what they have done in the past year since receiving the award. So now we get to the fun part. We turn to the first of the 2025 Research for the Common Good Award recipients. Felicia Johnson O'Brien will introduce each one, and they will present briefly on their experiences.
Let me see. Hold on, I think you have mine. Good evening, everyone. It's wonderful to have you here to be with us to celebrate this evening. Our first student is Camila Castaneda. She's a junior, majoring in biochemistry and theology. Camila participated in a Social Concerns Summer Fellowship and worked with Crossover Ministries, a healthcare clinic for Medicaid and uninsured patients in Richmond, Virginia. She assisted with various clinical needs, physical and administrative, as well as translating with their Hispanic patients. Her research question looked at the efficiency and sustainability of interpretation services for non-English speaking patients. Please join me in welcoming Camila.
Hello, I'm Camila Castañeda, and this summer I had the opportunity of immersion at Crossover Healthcare Ministry in Richmond, Virginia, where I was able to explore the nature of interpretation in a safety net clinic. So at Crossover, I served in many capacities as a scribe, interpreter, in patient care coordination, and in front desk. Each of my responsibilities awarded me with a unique skill set and allowed me to appreciate the nature of integration in healthcare. I learned that teamwork, communication, adaptability, and flexibility are key to sustaining the overall mission of Crossover. So what was striking in my introductory weeks at Crossover was how diverse the patient population was. So Spanish constitutes the primary language for a majority of the patients, and with this need and demographic comes a need for reliable interpretation services to uphold operational success. And just to briefly contextualize, during my first month at Crossover, there was a series of Medicaid eligibility changes, which translated to budget cuts and called for organizational restructuring and optimization in order to alleviate resource strain. So in my research development at this point, keeping in mind the diversity of Crossover and how the nature of the unpredictability of healthcare, my interest and attention was further guided towards interpretation. So interpretation at Crossover consists of in-person interpreters, and of the 47 listed contacts, only 5 of them are consistent or active. And in order to meet the needs of the clinic, Crossover employs a virtual interpreter service called Voice, which offers both audio call and video call options. And Crossover primarily uses the video call options because it is less costly. The Voice comes with a $120,000 yearly expenditure, an estimate, which is costly. So my research question became, how effective is the interpretation service protocol at Crossover Healthcare Ministry, and how can the model be improved to contribute to operational efficiency and overall sustainability? In my data collection, I took an ethnographic approach with brief interviews, taking extensive field notes, and considering my own observational input. I was able to triangulate between patients, providers, and the administrative team, and this allowed me to have more insight as to the quality of healthcare being delivered, as well as the actual in-clinic experience and the logistics, namely the financial implications of the current interpreter protocol. Then I identified the strengths and weaknesses of using Voice versus an in-person interpreter. With Voice, the strengths lie in its dependability, multiplicity, and accessibility. With in-person interpretation, it's that patient-centered care, financial sustainability with no cost, and its overall efficiency that allows for a more streamlined experience in the clinic. The pitfalls of Voice were that due to using the audio call option, visual and nonverbal cues are often lost, and this is very important for Crossover's population, which shows lower health literacy, and gestures and body language are crucial to communicating the needs of the patient so that providers can better devise a plan of care. And another weakness here is that providers have to reconnect with a different interpreter each time. An in-person interpretation, just variability in the availability of volunteers is what arose. So next, I explored volunteer retention, seeing as there was a consensus across the board that in-person interpretation is more optimal for Crossover and its sustainability. And in conversation with current and previous volunteer interpreters, it was clear that there was some confusion in expectations or unpredictability during a shift, and this called for a strengthening of coordination, volunteer coordination, and this steps that Crossover can take that are more immediate and very feasible would be to develop a more detailed schedule, including adopting a volunteer-provider pairing model, so this can allow volunteers to have a more positive in-clinic experience, they can feel productive and confident. So this is the current volunteer interpreter schedule, which only gives information about the shift date, time, and location. And this is my proposed interpreter schedule, which gives additional information as to the specialty and provider that volunteers will be working with. This is important in fostering that close relationship between volunteers and providers, as well as allowing for preparation if needed to revisit any common medical terminology associated with the specialty. This way, volunteers can feel more prepared. Another factor I considered was the volunteer recruitment. So currently, Crossover has a dedicated effort to recruit Spanish-speaking individuals by sending out flyers to local churches or at community events. Something that can happen to re-strategize and hopefully improve recruitment would be to target bilingual pre-med students. Seeing as these students are pre-med, there might be a mission alignment there since they're seeking valuable clinical exposure. And this can be accomplished by tabling at club fairs at local colleges or distributing a virtual flyer to the pre-health offices of these colleges. Finally, looking forward for Crossover, they could entertain a partnership with Notre Dame Medical Interpreters Club, and in this model, providers will connect with interpreter students via Zoom Healthcare. Zoom Healthcare is HIPAA compliant, it is financially practical, and it will function as an on-call resource secondary to in-person interpretation. Since Zoom Healthcare can run for up to 30 hours, a provider won't have to reconnect. And with the camera functionality available at no additional cost, volunteers can take a chance to see those visual cues that are lost with the audio calls of voice. On a closing note, my experience at Crossover was very fulfilling and the research was very meaningful to me. As someone who served as the ad hoc interpreter for my parents, I'm just very passionate and grateful about the opportunity to be involved in efforts for more dignified healthcare. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Camila. Erin Kong is a sophomore. She's a double major in neuroscience and behavior and anthropology, and she participated in NDBridge this past summer, working with a clinic and school run by the Capuchin Sisters in Sanyaju, Tanzania, where she helped provide healthcare and education to children, the elderly, and people experiencing poverty. Erin's research question focused on structural and cultural systems in rural Tanzania and how they inform patterns of disease and local health outcomes. Welcome, Erin.
Hello, everybody. My name is Erin, and during my 8 weeks of NDBridge, I spent that time in a community known as Sanyaju, Tanzania. To start off, I want to ask you all, what does health mean to you? In Tanzania, this was a question I really grappled with, given that I was at a health center. And typically, when we think about health, we relate it to the biology, the biological components, the pathogens related to it. How do we clinically treat it? But my time in Tanzania actually shifted my perspective on the way we should approach the term health and what exactly it is. And that all started with Emma's Health Center, which is the place that I worked at for the 8 weeks there. Established by a group of Capuchin nuns, the health center runs quite extensively with both an eye and dental clinic, a general outpatient department, a labor and delivery ward, and much more. And during my time there, I rotated around all different departments, being able to see the different health landscape that existed within this local community. But in order to first really develop this idea of what exactly health is, I had to do a lot of background research and develop a bit context behind it. That led me to these 3 specific people who formulated a lot of the basis of my research. First is Nancy Shepard Hughes, who really brought to me this idea of whether health is biology. And she talked about the idea that society can really affect the way our body functions. Then comes Paul Farmer, who introduces this really important idea that health and illness needs to be understood within the context of a culture and society, and it can't just be a standalone idea. And Catherine Coleman Flowers, an environmental justice advocate, actually brought those two ideas together in her own research that she did with rural Alabama communities, in which she saw a spike in neglected tropical diseases in America, which was really concerning given the fact that NTDs had been widely eradicated in most of America. She actually found that the health outcomes seen in the people within these communities was all stemming from policy issues as well as systematic neglect and sanitation, which comes to show health isn't really just biology. It's actually very layered. So that led me to my research question of, how do intersecting structural and cultural systems in rural Tanzania inform local patterns of disease and health outcomes? In order to do this, I had to first understand the diagnostic patterns within the center that I was working at. And that led me to work in the lab, where I saw a lot of cases of parasitic infections like hookworm and ascariasis, as well as brucellosis and salmonella typhi, which causes typhoid fever. Interestingly, all of these are connected to contaminated food and water sources. But the way in which the doctors at Emmaus Health Center kind of handled these cases very flawlessly showed to me how endemic in nature the conditions were, which led me to question, well, why is it so localized in Tanzania? And why do we see it in this place, but not in America? That meant I had to look further from the health center, and so that led me to look at the community itself. Sanyaju is a huge agricultural community, which means everyone's working and living in an environment where you're growing crops and working with animals, which meant children as young as 10 years old are seen herding livestock in these villages. But that also means that all of this is very heavily integrated within the living and working spaces. So animals are roaming around in areas where crops may be grown, and also they're roaming around in areas where children are running around and playing, which then we see a cycle of live pathogens being incorporated within the entire community, and you see that cycle of illness over and over. The same thing occurs with ideas of structural vulnerabilities in the water infrastructure, in which sometimes people are drinking water unknowingly that has been contaminated, or because the government hasn't properly treated that water. And because of this, we also see people then getting sick with conditions like brucellosis and salmonella typhi. And lastly, a really unique aspect that kind of affected the entire health landscape of Tanzania itself, and Sanyaju specifically, had to do with this idea of medical pluralism, in which multiple different belief systems within medicine can actually coexist in one environment. And that was a finding that I found specifically with a really special group of people we worked with at times from the Maasai tribe, who tended to kind of combine herbal medicine practices with typical Western biomedicine practices. And that to me showed that that was quite different from what we see in America. So ultimately, all of my observations kind of culminated into this one key insight, which is health isn't just biological. It is a function of the structural and cultural context in which people live. So then why does this exactly matter for the common good? Well, one, it establishes that this idea that illness should never be considered as individual failure, because really it should be understood as a structural vulnerability in terms of the cultural, social, and infrastructural systems that exist within a society. And we saw this with Tanzania, in which certain practices actually contributed to a sustaining cycle of illness. We also know from this that we need to implement health systems that really respect and integrate the local values and models, rather than replacing them in order to find more long-term solutions to healthcare. Going forward, I would love the opportunity to really apply my findings from Sanyaju into other local communities and see how health is really localized within specific contexts. I'd also like to dive deeper into this idea of what medical pluralism is and how we can find a balance between existing medical systems and models that exist within different communities to create something that really respects the people within a place and to formulate a healthcare system that's actually fitting and beneficial for the long term. And that ultimately leads into this idea of really being able to find global, scalable, and culturally relevant solutions to healthcare so that we're really respecting the communities that we're trying to help. And ultimately, I would just like to thank everybody that made this whole experience possible, and also to my 3 wonderful NDBridge teammates, Caitlin, Nora, and Sadie, who helped me throughout this entire journey as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Erin. Our next student is Kyle Lochner. Kyle is a sophomore majoring in political science with minors in economics and the Hesburgh program in public service. Kyle participated in NDBridge and worked with Earthlinks, a nonprofit organization in Denver, Colorado, that assists people experiencing homelessness and economic poverty. His question focused on the impact Earthlinks has in Denver in terms of nutrition access, housing initiatives, and interactive workshops, and how those results could inform the work of other nonprofits working with poor and unhoused populations. Join me in welcoming Kyle.
Good evening, everyone. So tonight I have the pleasure of talking to all of you about the research I did at my environmental nonprofit, Earthlinks, in Denver, Colorado. So throughout this presentation, I hope to guide you all through the background about the organization, my research question, my findings, and my future research frontiers. So to kind of start out with its background, Earthlinks was founded in 1996 with the idea that healing through homelessness comes through reconnection to people, to purpose, and the planet. Since 2014, it has been located in Denver's Sun Valley neighborhood, the poorest neighborhood in the city. And even though it's a small space of just a little over 3,000 square feet, it makes a big impact with over 2/3 of it devoted towards urban gardening. My research question mainly centered on the idea of how does Earthlink's holistic model reduce homelessness, hunger, and unemployment, and should it be adopted more broadly? So when I talk about Earthlink's holistic model, I mean three things. Not those. Well, I guess I do. So first one is housing. Housing costs the U.S. government billions of dollars each year to address, with the average government spending between $1,600 and $6,000 each year to address a homeless person in an encampment. Earthlink's case management team offers a low-cost solution to this, as it's able to house around 70% of participants within 1 year of joining the program. The second topic I looked into was food security. Despite decades of assistance, food insecurity remains widespread. Roughly 3 in 5 homeless individuals report inadequate or infrequent meals. Earthlinks is able to address that by producing over 1,250 pounds of fresh produce annually. So I just want to pause for a second and just recognize how amazing that number is, 1,250. This is for a space that has a little over 2,000 square feet of gardening in urban Denver. So for roughly every 2 square feet, it's producing 1 pound of fresh produce each year to give to their participants, and the Sun Valley neighborhood kitchen just feet away from their door. Just mind-blowing. And the third and last one was employment. Stable income is a critical, but yet 70 to 90% of unhoused individuals lack a stable source of revenue. And this is mainly due to a lack of permanent addresses, transportation, and the network needed to secure a job. Earthlink's paid workshop program creates stability by building skills, confidence, and income among individuals, which allows them to have long-term success in the job market. So I can talk on and on about Earthlinks and just how amazing it is, but I think no one could do it better than the participants themselves.
Friendship.
Funny. Community.
Growth.
Family.
Safe. And comfort. Soothing for me. Familia.
So Earthlink's motto is community ends isolation, and as you can see in that video, they really embody that. They're not just a community, they're a family. And so, Earthling's importance to the common good. Why does this model matter to us all? Well, for starters, it effectively addresses the root causes, not just the symptoms. There's more. There we go. It reduces public expenditures through prevention. It improves community health and well-being, and it provides a replicable model of equity. So as I look ahead, I have 3 key future research frontiers. The first one is policy integration. How can local governments integrate this successful model into their own functions? The second is economic impact. How does the long-term public savings from Earthlings reduce emergency services, healthcare, and law enforcement? Quantifying that would be just absolutely fascinating to learn. We know there's savings, we just don't know how much. And scalability. How can this model be replicated among other cities in the US, and to what success? And so kind of with that, I just want to thank just NDBridge for letting me be a part of this amazing program. I definitely think it changed the trajectory of my academics here at Notre Dame. It was mentioned that I'm an economics major, while I'm hoping to now pursue a concentration in poverty alleviation, in part because of this program. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. Next up, Joan Reimer is a junior. She's majoring in applied computational mathematics and statistics and has a supplementary major in education, school, and society and a minor in theology. Joan participated in a social concerns summer fellowship working with the Abbey of Regina Laudis, a community of Benedictine nuns in Bethlehem, Connecticut, who dedicate their lives to work and prayer. While there, Joan helped cultivate various gardens on the farm, supported the hospitality work of the sisters, and facilitated land experiences for guests. Joan's research question examined the work and practices of the Rule of St. Benedict, which she believes provides a framework for living a just life. Welcome, Joan.
Hi, everyone. I spent my summer living and working at the Abbey of Regina Laudis, which is the first community of Benedictine sisters to be established in the United States. The sisters are dedicated to honoring God through praying the Divine Office, which is a series of 8 prayers that they pray at different times throughout the day and night, and through physical work and cultivating the land. When I first arrived at the Abbey, I really struggled to see how the sisters engaged with justice at all in their everyday lives. Because they are a cloistered abbey, they don't have much interaction with the outside world, and any interactions that they do have are largely limited to voluntary ones. The more time that I spent there and the more that I spoke with my fellow interns, though, I came to realize that the nuns quite literally embodied justice in everything that they said and did. While I was at the Abbey, I would periodically check the news, and I found that almost all of the responses to injustice that I saw in the news had failed. I wondered why this was the case, but when I reflected on it, I came to realize that I believe that this is because these responses did not have a notion of what right relations look like. Right relations are at the core of justice, and they are included in almost every definition of justice that we see. Because of this, I decided to formulate my question around how the nuns at the Abbey of Regina Laudis, guided by Benedictine spirituality and the Rule of St. Benedict, provide a model for right relationships, which are at the core of justice. In order to answer my question, I developed an outline of 5 principles that I believe constitute right relationships. The principles are as followed: contemplative work, harmony and respect between humans and creation, creative work, hospitality, and gathering. My first principle is contemplative work. Contemplative work occurs when we really listen to God and hear how he's stirring in our hearts in the more mundane tasks that we might do during our days. I found contemplative work to be pretty uncomfortable at times, but I found that it really made me conscious of what I was doing, and I was able to see God through the little actions and little moments of my days. In the Rule of St. Benedict notes that idleness is the enemy of the soul. I firmly believe that idleness does not just refer to laziness, but we are idle whenever we are not fully present to the sanctity of our work. The next principle is a harmonious relationship between humans and nature. The Abbey's relationship with the land is nothing short of harmonious. Like we mentioned before, they cultivate the land, they have numerous farms and gardens, and a lot of the sisters spend their entire days working with the land. Because of this, they're familiar with it, and they're inclined to treat it well through practices like using natural fertilizers or rotating crops seasonally. I had my first experience with animal husbandry over the summer, and I got to work with our dairy cows, especially with the baby cows, every night. It was definitely a pretty challenging experience because they all have different temperaments, but the birth of a new calf halfway through the summer brought me closer to the miracle of life and made me more conscious of how right relationships need to revolve around gentleness and patience and working with people through any sort of struggles that we might have. The next principle is creative work and how that kind of relates to individual formation. Since its founding, the Abbey has emphasized creative work, and all of the nuns that join are encouraged to have a monastic craft. These range from blacksmithing, seeing a nun blacksmith is pretty cool, pottery, wood turning, soap making, if you can name it, they pretty much have it. I personally got to engage with creative work in the kitchens, where I got to put fun new twists on traditional recipes, which oftentimes sparked conversations with some of the nuns that might have been a little bit odd at first, but ended up in us forming really deep bonds that have lasted since my experience ended. The next principle is hospitality. The nuns are hospitable, and the Abbey serves as a guest house for any guests who may come and need lodging. Like I said, guests are given lodging, and the system that they use are guest houses, so they live in community with one another. This means that guests get to share in more mundane parts of each other's days, like having a morning coffee, walking to Mass together, having all of their meals together, etc. Saint Benedict, in his rule, asks that all of the nuns treat all of the guests that come as though they were Christ himself. And this is really embodied by the Abbey's hospitable spirit, and they welcome any guests and love them for who they are. Guests are also given a chance to parlor with one of the sisters, which is a one-on-one meeting where they get to better contemplate and really reflect on their experience with the help of a nun. My final principle is gathering. Whenever an important issue or decision arises at the Abbey, the nuns gather together to discuss it. When they are trying to decide or come up with an answer for the problem, the hierarchy that they use does not revolve around financial means or what the nuns can bring in terms of finances, but revolves around their dedication to the Abbey and the time that they've spent there. Because of this, the system that they have is very equitable and allows different nuns to really bring their fullest selves to every conversation that they may have, which is relatively unique from what I could tell to the Benedictine experience. The 5 principles that I just outlined ought to be used in responses to injustice to ensure that they focus on right relationships, which are really at the core of the common good, because living well with one another forms a strong basis for justice. The time that I spent at the Abbey of Regina Laudis made me keenly aware of how important right relationships are to living well together, because it was modeled for me so well by all of the sisters. Moving forward, I'm hoping to look at right relationships in the educational setting, which is something that I'm really interested in, especially in terms of more underprivileged or forgotten schools within the American school system. I'm hoping to look at how different nutritional programs or extracurricular activities can help promote student success within the classroom and can help form those bonds that are really, really important to student cognition and learning. Echoing what everybody else has said so far, I had an incredible experience over the summer, and I'm very grateful for everybody who made it possible, and it has really changed my perception on justice and the common good, which I'm hoping to help pursue for the rest of my life. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. Next is Maya Tello. Maya is a sophomore with a double major in the program of Liberal Studies and Design. She has a minor in the Hesburgh program in public service. Maya participated in NDBridge and worked at Dismas Farm in Massachusetts, in Oakham, Massachusetts, which provides services to returning citizens who are unhoused. The farm helps residents learn critical vocational skills to reintegrate positively and meaningfully with society. Residents and staff work together to tend the farm and grow food for the local CSA and food pantries. Maya's question examined reentry programs such as Dismas House and how they might be used in the U.S. justice system to promote long-term rehabilitation, recovery, and reintegration while reducing rates of recidivism. Welcome, Maya.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Maya Tello, and I'm really excited to share my research on mass incarceration, making today better for our future neighbors with you all today. Oh, there we go. Okay, thank you. Oh, okay. Alrighty. So, the topic of substance abuse and mass incarceration is near and dear to my heart. I grew up witnessing my older sister suffer from substance abuse, and I saw the mental and emotional tolls that took on both her and our family. And as a child of immigrant Colombian parents, I did not understand why she made the choices she did and why she went down that path. I believed she could do better, and that grew some resentment in me, and I didn't know how to handle that at a young age. And that is why I'm really grateful to have had the opportunity to intern at Dismas Family Farm in Worcester, Massachusetts this summer, because it taught me that healing is not a linear process, that healing requires family, it requires community, and it requires services to help you want to move forward and to help you be able to do so. And so Dismas House is a beautiful exemplary program. They are a nonprofit that helps former offenders re-enter society, as well as overcome substance abuse. And during my time this summer, I witnessed all their amazing programming and how that helped shape the lives and change the lives of the men that I worked with. Dismas provides vocational work. Within that vocational work, they develop skills that allows them to, once they re-enter society, be able to gain a good job and be able to sustain oneself. They offer aftercare support that once you graduate from the program, you are not alone in this world. They are still there to be a family for you and to still help you. They also offer financial literacy. When you, as all of us know, when you leave and enter the world has its own challenges, especially economic ones. And oftentimes when you are in prison, you've been detached from society for a while, that being able to be retaught these financial literacy skills, being able to learn how to budget your money, how to spend your money, is very valuable and are skills that the program also helps former offenders relearn. The residents, some of them never went to school, because a lot of them grew up in poverty. And so the program helps them be able to reach higher education and be able to go back to school and learn and do something that they love. It's a second chance at life. And I would say the most significant and striking thing of what the program offers is, once again, a community. I believe when you believe that you are loved, when you know that you have people you can rely on, and when you have access to the resources to be able to move forward in life, anything is possible. I'm sorry, everyone. There we go. And so recognizing the transformative power that Dismas offers, my original research question went on, how can we implement these programming and this community that Dismas provides on a nation larger scale in our prison system so we can help former offenders be able to re-enter society, as well as what lessons do international models like Norway and Germany, who are pioneers in restorative justice, and what can we take away from them to be able to inform our own country and our own prison systems? However, as I did more research, I found all this data that already shows that as Americans, as a society, for many decades ago, we already recognized the need to move from a punitive system to a more restorative one. Therefore, if we recognize this need, why haven't we done anything about it? This summer, the directors of Dismas Farm traveled to Germany and Norway to see for themselves restorative justice at work. In Germany, they found that what was their click for them to finally move from a punitive one to a restorative one was that they learned from World War II. They learned that they didn't want to be a country based on revenge. They wanted to be one that was there for their people. And the way that restorative justice manifested for them was through their open system prisons. Germany's prisons are actually embedded in neighborhoods. Isn't that shocking? They're in neighborhoods. Prisoners are able to leave and interact with the community, and then they come back. Isn't that mind-blowing? In Norway, for them, restorative justice took in the way of a partnership between the community and the government. And their desire to move towards restorative justice was because they believe that your loss of liberty is punishment enough. Because at the end of the day, regardless of what you have done, you are still a human being. And they want their practices to reflect that. In Germany, recognizing that they don't have life sentences and that one day their prisoners are going to go back into society and become the neighbors that will live alongside their citizens, they make sure that the reentry process does not just begin once they are indicted into jail, but also continues afterwards. And that with the community come in partnership with the government, citizens actually look forward to welcoming their future neighbors back home. And it creates a sense of, this is our collective responsibility. We are all in this together. However, I realized that, and the results speak for themselves. When you have, with their current system in Europe, recidivism rates in 5 years is just 25%. Compared to the US, in 3 years, it is 82%. That is more than double. And as I continue to do my research, I realized that there's an important perspective missing from the conversation. We know how Europe does it. We've seen that we ourselves have implemented state initiatives. But how does Asia do it? Has Asia moved towards restorative justice measures? If so, how have they done so? And have they been successful? The answer is yes. They have done so, and they have been successful. And in Japan, their principle of restorative justice relies on their cultural emphasis of accountability and community. Their model, they perform restorative justice through accountability through repair, in which they bring defendants and victims together in conversation to talk about and move forward from the crime that was committed. Because once again, at the end of the day, they're a community and they're all in this together. In Thailand, In Thailand, they moved to restorative justice as a response to overcrowdedness in their prison systems, as well as a high youth conviction rate. And so their restorative justice looks in the sense of how can we prevent youth from entering the prison system, and how can we, for the youth that have fallen through the cracks, how can we better support them? And once again, with these implementations, they have improved their prison systems. They have moved to a restorative justice path. And so what has it been for us that has prevented us from doing so? Is it our culture? Is it our government? Is our society set up? I believe that once we find what that missing click is for us, we can finally move past that divide and move towards a restorative justice system. Because we are a great nation, and other great nations have been able to do so. So why haven't we been able to? And once we find our click, we'll finally be able to move to a restorative justice system and make today truly better for our future neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you, Maya. Last but not least, David Yawman is a junior, majoring in mechanical engineering with a minor in poverty studies. David participated in a social concerns summer fellowship and worked in Paimal, Uganda with Battery-Operated System for Community Outreach, an organization under the trusteeship of the Catholic Archdiocese of Gulu that works to provide technology services, entrepreneurial training, and community development to support education and economic empowerment. David's question looked at the benefits of the widespread adoption of biogas in northern Uganda, as well as the technical and economic barriers. Welcome, David.
Awesome. Thank you, Felicia, for the intro, and good afternoon, everyone. There we go. So I spent my summer in Paimal, a small village in northern Uganda, and my main topic of research was into biogas. Biogas systems take an input of animal waste and water, and they extract and store the methane-based gas that is produced for use in cooking, and also produce a highly effective, odorless fertilizer out the back end of these systems. Now, some of my research this summer was academic in nature and technical. There was also field work involved in various aspects. I got to visit some sites at local churches, schools, where biogas systems had already been set up and were properly functioning. And I also had the chance to work with an installation company to install a system of my own at a local homestead. And all of my research this summer was aimed at one central question. How can access to biogas in northern Uganda be promoted? And what are some of the barriers to widespread adoption? So before we get into the results of my research, I'd love to take you on a little trip to Paimal with me, some regional context. I was in a region called the Acholi region of Uganda, and the Acholi people have been historically oppressed, going all the way back to the British colonization of the mid-19th century, and all the way up to the modern day. The first photo on this slide is of an internal displacement camp. It was taken around the early 2000s. During a period of intense and violent conflict in the north of Uganda, the Acholi people were forced out of their homes and into these displacement camps. They had to stay there for nearly a decade, and in 2006, as they were allowed to return to their homes after the conflict in the area had subsided, they were offered very little financial or social support in getting back on their feet. The Acholi region now has the highest rate of poverty in the entire nation. The Acholi region is also very rural, which is important to understand as we consider how biogas might be used to help them out. Biogas, of course, relying on natural resources. It's a great candidate in rural areas that may not be as well connected to the national grid, for example, other source of energy use. They also are they have a lot of cows, put simply. Cows, goats, and pigs, the animal waste that are produced by these animals are perfect for powering these biogas systems. And then finally, it's important to understand how cooking is currently done. Biogas, of course, offers a clean source of cooking. These last two photos here are of stoves in Acholi homes in Paimal, where I got to visit into many homes in the area. Wood burning and charcoal burning stoves are very common. Unfortunately, both of these sources of fuel have some drawbacks, namely that they produce toxic fumes that can be dangerous to inhale. They encourage deforestation and depletion of natural resources. And they also come with a recurring financial cost. You have to purchase fuel bi-weekly, monthly, on a regular basis. And biogas presents a solution to all three of these drawbacks. So to get a little technical, my background is in mechanical engineering. While installing a system this summer, I documented the process on a step-by-step basis and put together a manual for how these systems work for future use by Notre Dame engineers and by the organization I was working with, Bosco. So some pictures there working from trench to installing all the various pieces to routing all the piping to store gas as well as to produce fertilizer out the back end of these systems. And then I also put together a 3D model. Any Notre Dame engineers will recognize the SolidWorks technology being utilized there. And then moving on to really the crux of my research is the different factors that may hinder the spread of biogas and perhaps some solutions on how to address them. So first, in the financial sector, these systems can be relatively expensive, and to purchase one as the average Acholi citizen is not really feasible. You can look to banks for loans, but banks are notoriously poor at dealing with those living with poverty, and interest on a loan for a biogas system to a typical family could come with 30 to 40% interest annually. So I was directed to look into VSLAs, or Village Savings and Loans Associations. Now, in these systems, which are already implemented widely in Uganda, a group of individuals will pool their money, and then an individual may take money out as a loan, but then pay back into their group at an interest rate of just 1% to 2% annually, making these systems much more affordable for the average citizen. Second, we looked into production capabilities in Uganda. Currently, Uganda does not manufacture their own biogas systems, but there are companies in this region where pond liners are produced, and pond liners use the same high-density polyethylene material as these large biogas bags. So I propose that by partnering with a local company and helping them retrofit their machining process for their pond liners, we could produce our own biogas systems locally. Finally, we looked into the societal implications. The average Acholi home looks sort of like this photo in the middle here. It's a grass-thatched hut, and while they're very effective for insulation protection from rain overall, they're not great for ventilation. And when working with gas, it's important that you have a properly ventilated structure. So I pointed out that in order to incorporate biogas more widely in this society, it would be important to also include the caveat that permanent structures would need to be built at these homes. Now, this is a fairly large societal shift, and perhaps is a major drawback of implementing this technology. However, the benefits associated with this biogas technology, which are relatively well understood by people in the region after having numerous conversations with them, it's something that people are open to and are willing to adopt in order to pursue a safer, healthier form of cooking, as well as to produce fertilizer, which is great for their crops, which in an agricultural society is, of course, a major benefit. As I reflect on my summer and look forward to the future, there's a couple main takeaways I have. The first being the bulk of this presentation, which has been engineering in context. It's not just about the technical aspects of your work. It's about the non-technical aspects. It's about all the disciplines you have to look into and interact with in order to fully consider your solutions that you propose. And then secondly, community-led development. This idea that I'm falling in love with about how the people who are closest to a problem are the ones best equipped to solve it. And it's something I encountered countless times during my summer in Paimal. Just the local knowledge that was imparted upon me by everyone I interacted with that guided me to proper solutions and a deliverable that felt like it mattered. Just huge. On a daily basis, a couple pictures with some of the most important people. Father Joe, Mattia, Opio, just some of the most amazing people who asked the best questions that I would have never thought to ask myself. So as I move forward as an engineer and with further research, I can only hope to match the enthusiasm and curiosity they showed to me, and it was a beautiful thing, the amount of knowledge they were able to impart upon me. So finally, I just want to say a huge thank you to the Andrews and McNeil families for being here. There's a million people to thank. Emily thanked a bunch of them already. But I'm also a graduate of the NDBridge program, and that was a transformational, foundational experience for me. Some lifelong friends I made along the way through that program, and just so thankful for all the support you guys bring to these programs. And it's a great thing that you guys do. So thank you. Take it away. Thank you.
A huge congratulations to our award recipients. As we conclude the awards portion of the evening, Suzanne Shanahan, the Leo and Arlene Hawks Executive Director at the Institute for Social Concerns, will offer some brief remarks now. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. So wonderful to be with you today. It is truly a joy and an honor to be able to say a few words. I want to make 3 quick remarks. First, wow. Wow. Second, wow. That was amazing. And third, wow. That was amazing and such a source of inspiration and hope. at a moment that often seems fairly dark in this world. I reflect upon the words of Hannah Arendt, who herself was a Jewish refugee fleeing the Holocaust around World War II. She talked about the importance of illuminators in dark times, how illuminators, seemingly ordinary people, can be capable of transcendent things. Today, as most of you know, is Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year for the Jewish faith. It is a day of atonement, a day where Jews pursue reconciliation with God and with humankind for their transgressions. And today, like all of you, I awoke to the news of a truly unspeakable act outside a Jewish temple in Manchester. It was a heartbreaking horror, but also one that seems all too common in a world consumed by vitriol. I wonder today how it is possible for the students who presented here and the 277 other students who worked alongside communities worldwide, students who demonstrated such extraordinary solidarity in their commitment to those who suffer, those who struggle, and who daily work to bring goodness to our world, how those very students can inhabit a world with same individuals who seek to belittle, to abuse, to degrade and destroy. Evil feels like it is everywhere. And yet, today we see hope in these students and in their work. Arendt also reminded us that evil comes from a failure to think. Evil defies thought. As soon as thought tries to engage itself with evil and examine the premises and the principles from which it originates, it is frustrated because it finds nothing there. That is the banality of evil. This seems to be an incredibly important reminder today. Education, thought, and care are our safeguard from the easy descent into acts of evil, indifference, and apathy. As Arendt also noted, education is the point at which we decide whether we love the world enough to take responsibility for it. Her words are also echoed 50 years later by Pope Francis in Laudato Si', where he notes, "We must regain the conviction that we need one another, that we have a shared responsibility for others in the world, and that being good and decent are worth it." If nothing else, this is what I hope each of you have gleaned from your summer research for the common good. I hope this work has reaffirmed your love and commitment to the world. I hope that it has fortified a strong sense of moral ambition and begun what will be a lifelong commitment to knowledge in the service of justice. I hope that you will be relentless and indeed ferociously committed to be an extraordinary person, committed to extraordinary good for this world. It seems only fitting to conclude here with the words of Rabbi Abraham Isaac Heschel. Our goal should be to live in radical amazement, to get up in the morning and look at the world that takes nothing for granted. Thank you. And with that, I'm going to pass the baton to Hugh Andrews, the chairman of the Andrews McMeel Universal, and himself a Notre Dame graduate not too long ago.
Suzanne is very kind. It's been since 1988, so it's been quite a while ago, but that's all right. I'm looking at two of my best friends from Kansas City that were class of 87, so there's somebody a little bit older in the room. But tonight, I have to tell each of you, you're just sensational. I mean, what you've done, the way you go after it, the way you seize the moment, and your research is phenomenal. I mean, Father Paul remembers. I mean, he's been coming for 20 years or more. He used to run the center. It's amazing to see the evolution of the students. I almost called them kids. But they play at a level now that they didn't play at 30 years ago. And you all should be very proud of that. You did a great job this evening. And I also want to thank Suzanne and her leadership, and Felicia and Emily and Jaylene. The center is just hitting on all cylinders right now. I come from a sales background. I really like numbers to grow every year, and to hear that we've moved up to 283 students is just outstanding. Can't thank you enough. So before I close, because they put me at the end just before we go to food, Father Paul's going to say something and then off to the reception. I just want to tell you how happy I am to be here, how much it means to my family that this continues to thrive. And I believe Lou Nani, who's apt to say some things in marketing materials to just grab your attention, and it really did grab our attention, once said that this program was the most significant and impactful program at Notre Dame. And there is no doubt, he may have been being a little bit out on the ledge when he said it 20 years ago, 15 years ago, but what you all are doing with it today is making it that. So thank you very much.
I invite Father Paul Coleman, CSC, to now offer a benediction before we move to the reception. Father Paul is Associate Professor of Theology and former Executive Director of the Institute for Social Concerns. Please welcome Father Paul Coleman.
Thank you, Felicia. When I was a young priest, near the parish where I lived, there was a bench. And on the bench was the word available and a phone number. You've seen these benches before. Outdoor advertising that you can rent by the month to put up a poster or try to get your business more business. When I was at the parish for a few months, someone who was unsheltered started to sleep on that bench at night. His body would cover the phone number, but not the word available. And after about a week of looking at him, and he was gone when we got up in the morning, I was kind of moved to sort of say, okay, tomorrow evening, I'm going to go say hi to him. And so I kind of was ready for what was I going to say. And I went, and he was gone. So I never met him, this unsheltered person who had lived on this bench or slept on this bench for the week before that. The summer for these 283 students was available. And they could have done a lot of things. And they chose to participate in the Institute for Social Concerns experiences. And we see the fruitfulness of that engagement. The Institute for Social Concerns and a whole bunch of community partners around the world, NGOs and others who provide occasions for our students could do a lot of things, but they made the Institute and those agencies made themselves available for our students to accompany them in the services they provide. The Andrews and McNeil families many years ago had a lot of availability for things they could have done. And Hugh, his mom and dad, and the McNeils made available all sorts of summer experiences for generations of Notre Dame students to do things like this with their summers. there's a lot of availability out there. And there's a lot of availability in us, internally and also externally, to allow the invitations to make contact and compassion, to achieve insight and understanding of the world's needs, and to join people as they seek to face them. So, what's available to you and for you is what I leave you with. Let us pray. Almighty God, you made available for us this remarkable world. You made available to us the freedom to understand, to accompany, to embrace, to heal. You make available to us new opportunities every day we wake up. And you make sadly available to us opportunities to soothe wounds, accompany the grieving, meet yawning social needs. Make us available in the ways that you know best, that we might grow in the ways you invite us to, that we may make your grace and mercy more available to a world that needs it. You live and reign forever and ever. Amen.